Hello everyone. One of the first things I teach my students, or tell my students whenever I meet them for the first time, is that math is everywhere. Okay? It's in the air we breathe. It's in the stores whenever we go buy things. It's even in works of art whenever we go to the museums. Now, my job as an educator is to teach my students how to recognize when math is applied. It's not easy, but it's one of the things that we have to do as students and educators. Okay? So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to teach you how math and art are interrelated. And actually, more specifically, I'm going to teach you how to create your own work of art using math. And this work of art is called Tessellations. But before we get into that, we have to do a little bit of reviewing. What we need to review are the different movements that we have in geometry, namely transformations. A transformation is the change in a geometric figure's position, shape, or size. Here are a couple of examples of transformations that we'll use today. The first one's called a translation. A translation is a transformation that moves points and lines the same distance and in the same direction. Let's look at an example. Here we have a blue triangle where it moves to a different position. That's a translation. All the points and lines move in a different location. The other transformation is called a rotation. A rotation is when a figure, point, or line moves about a specific point. Let's look at an example using the same blue triangle. That blue triangle rotates about a specific point where all the lines and points rotate about in the same direction. Now we can start talking about tessellations. A tessellation is a repeating pattern of figures that completely covers a plane without gaps or overlaps. Notice that the background of this slide is a tessellation. It's a bunch of hexagons fitting together without gaps or overlaps. Here's another example using rabbits. And yet another example using a sunset. Now, tessellations aren't specifically just art. We can find them at home, like in our driveway, or we can find them in the kitchen, or even we can find them in our bathroom. Now, tessellations aren't just man-made either. We can also find these tessellations in nature. For example, this is a honeycomb, or fish scales, or even on a turtle shell. Now let's go ahead and make our own tessellation. We start with any size square that we want. This square is about 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches. We start at one corner of one side and we draw any shape of line or any line that we want to the other corner of that same side. What we're trying to do is to create a template so that we can copy the same figure over and over and over again. Now it doesn't matter what the shape of the line is. You just want to do whatever. Now it's time to cut out our shape. We cut out the shape along the line to the best that we can. Now this is where geometry comes into play. We take the side that we cut out and we translate it to the other side of the square. Now remember, translating means moving everything over to another position. Now once we translate it, we need to tape it down so it doesn't move anymore. We still have two sides to take care of. We do the same things that we did earlier, where we start at one corner and we draw a line, any old line that we like. We cut out the piece along the line, and we take that piece and translate it to the other side and tape it down. Now we have our template. Well, with this we can create the same figure that fits within itself over and over and over. So let's do that. We trace around our template to create our figure. And then we fit our template within itself so that we can create this tessellation. And notice that there aren't any gaps and that I'm tracing the template off the blank sheet of paper. We want to cover the entire sheet, just like this. Here is our tessellation. Notice that there aren't any gaps or overlapping pieces within this figure. And so what we need to do now is we need to either decide to draw a picture or color it. Unfortunately, I couldn't figure out what this looked like, so I just decided to color it using two different colors. We want to make sure that the tessellation is visually appealing because this is a work of art, so take your time. So here's our final tessellation. Notice that there's no gaps, there was no overlapping, and it's visually appealing. Lastly, I'd like to show you some examples from students I've had in the past who created some amazing tessellations. However, some didn't use translations like I did. They used rotations, and the results are pretty impressive. Let's see if you can figure out which examples used rotations and which used translations. Now it's your turn to make a tessellation. Follow all of the directions and make sure that your final tessellation doesn't have any white showing, unless white's found in your drawing. In other words, make sure there aren't any gaps. Be creative, and you'll be amazed at what you've made.